I'm Callum Ridgway, 33 years old, and I used to think my life was pretty good. 3 months ago, I'd have told you my marriage to Marissa was solid, maybe even something to be proud of. We'd been together for 7 years, and I thought we'd figured out how to make it work despite our differences. She came from a world of old money, fancy houses, private schools, and family names that meant something. I came from a blue-collar life. My dad was a mechanic, my mom a nurse, and we never had much beyond what we needed. When we met, I was just a guy fixing computers, and she was this bright, beautiful woman who didn't seem to care about where I came from. I thought we were equals, or at least I convinced myself we were. But looking back, I see the cracks were always there, waiting to split wide open. Her family, her mother Blythe and her older brother Gregory, never liked me. Every time I was around them, it felt like I was auditioning for a part I'd never get. They'd smile, sure, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach their eyes. Marissa always brushed it off, saying, "They'll come around, Callum, just give them time." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But 7 years is a long time to wait for people to stop treating you like dirt under their polished shoes. Things had been tense for a while, little arguments here and there, but nothing I couldn't handle. That is, until the annual family reunion up in New York. It was supposed to be a weekend of bonding, a chance to smooth things over. Marissa begged me to go, said it'd be different this time, that her family would see me for who I was. I wasn't thrilled about it, honestly. I'd rather have stayed home and fixed a dozen broken laptops than face her relatives again, but I went for her. The estate was this huge colonial house perched on a cliff, all steep staircases and cold, echoing rooms. It was beautiful in a way that made you feel small, like you didn't belong unless you were born into it. From the moment we arrived, I could feel the weight of their stairs. Blythe greeted me with a handshake so limp I barely felt it, and Gregory smirked like he knew something I didn't. The whole weekend stretched out in front of me like a test I hadn't prepared for, and I wasn't wrong. Every conversation was a minefield. I'd say something simple, like how nice the weather was, and Blythe would correct me, saying it was unseasonably warm for this time of year, as if I'd insulted the family by not knowing. Gregory would chime in with some backhanded comment about my job, asking if I'd ever thought about moving up in the world. I'd laugh it off, try to keep the peace, but inside, I was boiling. Marissa kept telling me to relax, that they didn't mean anything by it, but I could see it in her eyes. She knew they did. By the second day, I was counting the hours until we could leave. I kept my head down, stayed polite, but it was like trying to hold water in my hands. It just kept slipping away. Dinner that night was the breaking point. We were all gathered around this long, polished table, candles flickering, silverware clinking, and I thought maybe I could make it through without a fight. Marissa squeezed my hand under the table, like she was rooting for me, and for a second, I felt okay. But then Gregory started in again, louder this time, and Blythe joined him, picking apart everything from the way I sat to the shirt I'd picked out. I could feel the room closing in, all those eyes on me, waiting for me to mess up. I don't know why I thought it'd be different. Maybe I was just tired of pretending it didn't hurt. Maybe I wanted to prove something to them, to Marissa, to myself. Whatever it was, it set the stage for everything that came after, and by the end of that weekend, I wasn't the same man who'd walked through those doors. That reunion wasn't just a family gathering. It was the start of a storm I didn't see coming, one that had been brewing quietly for years. I'm Callum Ridgway, and I've never been good at hiding how I feel, especially not that night at the reunion. The family estate up in New York was like something out of a movie, big, old, and cold, with its cliffside view and endless staircases winding up to rooms I wasn't allowed to see. Marissa had dragged me there, promising it'd be different this time, that her family would finally ease up on me. I didn't believe her, not really, but I went anyway because I loved her and because I kept hoping she'd be right one day. The whole place smelled like money and judgment, and from the minute we pulled up, I knew I was in for it. Gregory, her older brother, was waiting by the front door with that smirk of his, like he'd already won some game I didn't know we were playing. Blythe, her mother, swept out in a cloud of perfume and gave me a look that said I'd tracked mud on her perfect floors, even though my shoes were clean. I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just a couple days, but every step I took in that house felt like I was walking deeper into a trap. Marissa kept whispering to me, "Just smile, Callum, they'll warm up," but her voice sounded more desperate than sure. Dinner was the real test, though. We all sat down at this massive table, the kind you see in pictures of royalty, with candles and crystal glasses and more forks than I knew what to do with. I dressed up, put on a tie, even though I hate them, because I wanted to fit in, or at least not give them an easy target. The food came out, fancy stuff I couldn't pronounce, and I kept my mouth shut, nodding along while they talked about people and places I'd never heard of. Then Gregory started in. "So, Callum," he said, leaning back in his chair like he owned the world, "still tinkering with those computers? Must be nice to have such a simple life." His tone was all sharp edges, and a few of her cousins snickered. I forced a laugh, said something about how I liked my work, but he didn't let up. "Ever think about doing something more ambitious?" he asked, and I could feel Blythe's eyes on me, waiting for me to trip over my answer. I mumbled something about being happy where I was, and Marissa squeezed my knee under the table, like that was supposed to help. It didn't. The room kept buzzing with their chatter, and I felt like a ghost, just there, not really part of it. Then I got this dumb idea to give a toast. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it'd show them I wasn't some outsider, that I belonged at that table with my wife. I stood up, cleared my throat, and started talking about gratitude, about how lucky I felt to be part of their family. I kept it short, simple, nothing fancy, but halfway through, her cousins started laughing. Not loud, just this quiet, mean chuckle that spread like a ripple. My face burned, and I stopped, looking around at all those faces, some amused, some bored, none of them on my side. I raised my voice, not yelling, just firm, and said, "I'm serious. I mean this." The laughter died, and the room went dead quiet. I thought maybe I'd gotten through, that they'd heard me for once. But then Blythe stood up, slow and deliberate, like she was about to deliver a verdict. "We don't tolerate tantrums at this table, Callum," she said, her voice ice cold. Tantrums. Like I was a kid throwing a fit instead of a man trying to say something real. I looked at Marissa, waiting for her to say something, anything, to back me up. She didn't. She just stared at her wine glass, swirling it like it held all the answers. My chest tightened, and I sat back down, the silence pressing in on me. The rest of dinner dragged on, forks scraping plates, voices picking up again like nothing happened, but I was done. I could feel it in my gut. This wasn't just another bad night. It was the start of something breaking. Gregory smirked across the table, Blythe sipped her drink, and Marissa wouldn't meet my eyes. I tried to reach out, to build a bridge with that stupid toast, and they'd burned it down before I could finish. I kept my mouth shut after that, nodding when I had to, but inside, I was raging. Not loud, not wild, just this steady, growing heat I couldn't shake. I'd spent years taking their jabs, swallowing my pride, telling myself it was worth it for her. But sitting there, watching her choose her wine over me, I started to wonder how much more I could take. The night ended with polite goodbyes and fake smiles, and I followed Marissa up to our room, the weight of that moment still hanging over me. I didn't know it yet, but that toast gone cold was the first crack in a wall I'd been holding up for too long. I'm Callum Ridgway, and I've never been one for big blowouts. But that night after dinner at the reunion, I couldn't keep it in anymore. We'd made it back to the guest room Marissa and I were sharing, some fancy setup with a 4-poster bed and curtains that probably cost more than my car. The door clicked shut behind us, and I just stood there for a second, staring at the floor, trying to figure out how to say what I'd been holding back for years. My tie was choking me, so I yanked it off and tossed it on the chair, the whole night replaying in my head Gregory's smirks, Blythe's cold dismissal, and Marissa sitting there like a statue while her family laughed at me. I turned to her, and she was already perched on the edge of the bed, arms crossed, looking at me like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "What was that, Callum?" she asked, her voice low but sharp, like she was scolding a kid. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my cool, and said, "I've had enough, Marissa. I'm done with this." She rolled her eyes, and that little move lit a fire in me. "You're too sensitive," she said, like it was some fact I should have known by now. "They were just joking. You didn't have to make a scene." A scene? I hadn't yelled, hadn't thrown anything, just raised my voice to finish a toast they'd turned into a punchline. I stepped closer, hands clenched at my sides, and said, "I'm your husband, not their punching bag. I've been taking their crap for years, and you never once stand up for me." She didn't flinch, just kept those arms crossed tight, her face all calm and collected like she'd rehearsed this. "You don't get it," she said. "This is how they are. You just have to deal with it. Deal with it." 7 years of snide comments, fake smiles, and tests I couldn't pass, and she thought I should just keep swallowing it. My voice stayed low, but it was shaking now. "I shouldn't have to deal with it. You should have had my back down there. Instead, you let them treat me like I'm nothing." She sighed, long and dramatic, like I was exhausting her. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, and I could hear her mother in her tone, that same superior edge. That's when I lost it, not loud, not wild, just this quiet snap inside me. "No, Marissa," I said, "I'm not. I'm done pretending this is okay. I'm done being the guy they kick around while you watch." Her eyes narrowed, and she stood up, finally dropping those crossed arms. "You have two options, Callum," she said, her voice hard now. "Apologize or leave." I froze. The room went so still I could hear the wind rattling the old windows. Apologize? For what? For trying to say something real? For wanting my wife to care? I stared at her, waiting for her to take it back, to soften, to show me she didn't mean it. But she just stood there, chin up, like she'd drawn a line and dared me to cross it. I'd spent years fighting for us, arguing my case to her family, proving I was good enough, begging her to see me as more than the guy they didn't want her to marry. And now she was giving me an ultimatum, like I was the one who'd failed. My chest hurt, this deep, heavy ache, but my head was clear for the first time in a long time. I didn't yell back. I didn't beg her to change her mind. I just looked at her, really looked, and saw someone who'd chosen them over me again. "Okay," I said, my voice steady even though I felt like I was breaking. She blinked, like she hadn't expected that, but I didn't give her time to respond. I turned, grabbed my duffel bag from the closet, and started packing. Not everything, just what I needed. A few shirts, my jeans, my toothbrush. She watched me, silent now, and I could feel her eyes on my back, but she didn't say a word. "No, wait. No, let's talk." Nothing. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when she finally spoke. "You're really doing this?" she asked, and there was a crack in her voice, but it wasn't enough to stop me. I didn't turn around. "Yeah," I said. "I am." And then I walked out. The hallway was dark, the house quiet except for the faint hum of voices downstairs. I moved fast, down those stupid winding stairs, past the portraits of her ancestors staring at me like they knew I didn't belong. My truck was parked out front, and I threw my bag in the back, climbed in, and started the engine. The headlights cut through the night, and I drove off, the estate shrinking in my rearview mirror. I didn't know where I was going yet, just that I wasn't staying. My hands gripped the wheel tight, and my heart was pounding, but I didn't feel trapped anymore. I'd spent so long trying to fit into her world, bending myself to make it work, and in that moment, I realized I didn't have to. She'd given me a choice, apologize or leave, and I'd picked the one she didn't think I would. The road stretched out ahead, empty and black, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I'm Callum Ridgway, and I didn't look back after I left that big, cold house on the cliff. The truck's engine rumbled under me as I drove away from the reunion, away from Marissa and her family, away from 7 years of trying to be someone I wasn't. My hands were still tied on the wheel, my bag bouncing in the back seat, and my mind was spinning, but I didn't feel lost, not yet. I just knew I couldn't go home, not to the condo we shared, not to the life that felt like a cage with her name on it. I drove through the night, the road dark and quiet, passing little towns with their lights winking out one by one. My phone stayed off. I didn't want to hear her voice, or Gregory's, or Blythe's, didn't want to see the messages I knew would come. About 2 hours in, I saw a sign for a small airport, one of those regional ones you'd miss if you weren't looking. It wasn't much, barely more than a strip of runway and a low brick building, but something about it pulled me in. I parked the truck, grabbed my bag, and walked inside. The place was half asleep, just a bored guy at the counter and a couple of vending machines humming in the corner. I didn't have a plan, didn't even know where I wanted to go, but when I got to the desk, I asked, "What's the next flight out?" The guy barely looked up, tapping at his computer. "Got one to Oregon in 40 minutes, he said. One way's $200. Oregon. I'd never been there, never even thought about it much, but it sounded far, far from New York, far from her family, far from the mess I'd just walked out of. "I'll take it," I said, pulling out my card. He shrugged, printed the ticket, and handed it over like it was no big deal. To him, it wasn't. To me, it was everything. I sat on a hard plastic chair near the gate, my bag at my feet, watching the clock tick down. My heart was still racing, but it wasn't fear, it was something else, something like relief mixed with a kind of wild energy I hadn't felt in years. The plane was small, one of those puddle jumpers with tight seats and a single aisle, but I didn't care. I squeezed in next to a window, buckled up, and stared out at the dark runway. When the engines roared and we started rolling, I felt the ground slip away, and with it, all the weight I'd been carrying. Up there, 20,000 feet in the air, it was just me and the hum of the plane, no voices telling me what I should do, no eyes judging me for what I wasn't. I kept my phone off the whole flight, didn't even check it when we landed. I didn't want to know if Marissa had called, didn't want to hear her ask why I'd left or tell me to come back. The airport in Oregon was bigger but still quiet, the kind of place where people move slow and don't ask questions. I rented a car with cash, a beat-up sedan that smelled like old coffee, and drove toward the coast. I didn't have a map, just a vague idea of heading west until I hit water. The sky was starting to lighten by the time I got there, gray and soft with the promise of morning. I found a cheap motel near the beach, the kind with peeling paint and a neon sign that flickered. The lady at the desk didn't care who I was or why I was there, just took my money and gave me a key. The room was small bed, chair, a sink with a cracked mirror, but it was mine, at least for now. I dropped my bag, kicked off my shoes, and sat on the edge of the mattress, listening to the faint sound of waves outside. My hands were shaking a little, not from cold, but from the rush of it all. I'd done it. I'd walked out, bought a ticket, and landed halfway across the country with no plan and no apologies. Part of me wondered what Marissa was doing right then. Had she told her family yet? Were they laughing about it, saying they knew I'd crack eventually? I could picture Blythe shaking her head, Gregory smirking, and Marissa sitting there, maybe confused, maybe mad, but probably not chasing after me. She'd given me that ultimatum, apologize or leave, and I'd picked the door she didn't think I'd take. I lay back on the bed, staring at the stained ceiling, and let the quiet sink in. No one knew where I was. No one could reach me. For the first time in years, I wasn't answering to anybody out. Not her family, not even myself in that old, pleading way I used to. The air smelled like salt and freedom, and even though I didn't know what came next, I knew I wasn't going back. Oregon was a blank slate, a place where I could breathe without someone telling me I was doing it wrong. I closed my eyes, the sound of the ocean seeping through the thin walls, and thought, this is it. This is mine. The one-way ticket wasn't just a flight, it was a line I'd drawn, and I wasn't crossing back over it. I'm Callum Ridgway, and those first couple of days in Oregon felt like I'd stepped out of my own life and into someone else's, a better one, a quieter one. I woke up in that cheap motel room with the cracked mirror and the sound of waves sneaking through the window, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anybody. My phone was still off, shoved deep in my bag, and I wasn't ready to turn it back on. I didn't want to know what was waiting for me, missed calls, texts, whatever Marissa or her family had to say. I just wanted the silence, and Oregon gave it to me. After a quick shower in that tiny bathroom, I grabbed my stuff and checked out, figuring I'd find something more permanent. The lady at the desk didn't even look up when I dropped the key, and I liked that. No questions, no fuss. I drove along the coast in that rented sedan, the ocean on my left, gray and endless, and the trees on my right, tall and green in a way I wasn't used to back east. It was beautiful, but not in a loud way, just steady, like it didn't need to prove anything. I ended up in a small town, one of those places with a single main street and a handful of shops that looked like they'd been there forever. There was a sign in a window, studio for rent, $600 per month. I pulled over, called the number, and met a guy named Tom who smelled like fish and handed me the keys after I gave him cash for the first month. The place was nothing fancy, one room with a kitchenette, a bathroom, and a view of the water if you leaned out the window just right, but it was mine. I dropped my bag on the floor, sat on the lumpy couch, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That first day, I walked down to the beach, hands in my pockets, the wind tugging at my jacket. The sand was cold under my shoes, and the waves rolled in slow and steady, like they were telling me to take my time. I felt lighter than I had in years, like all that weight from Marissa's family, their jabs, their rules, their expectations had stayed back in New York. I picked up a couple freelance IT jobs online, easy stuff I could do from anywhere, and bought some groceries from a little store where the cashier smiled at me like I was a regular already. It was simple, and simple was what quickly I needed. By day 3, the piece started to crack. I'd left my phone off, but curiosity, or maybe stupidity, got the better of me, and I powered it up. The screen lit up with notifications, one after another, like a storm rolling in. Marissa had called 10 times, left voicemails I didn't listen to. Gregory sent a text, "You're a real piece of work," running off like that. Blythe's message was longer, something about how I disgraced the family and abandoned my responsibilities. I scrolled through it all, my stomach twisting, but I didn't let it sink in too deep. I'd heard it before, their anger, their blame, and I wasn't going to carry it anymore. There were messages from my sister too, worried ones, and a couple from my buddy Dorian, just checking in. I'd get back to them later, but not yet. I deleted the family group chats Marissa had forced me into, those endless threads of her cousins planning brunches and her mother sending passive-aggressive reminders about etiquette. My phone felt cleaner after that, like I'd scrubbed off a layer of grime. The calls kept coming, though, Marissa again, then Gregory, then a number I didn't recognize but figured was Blythe using someone else's phone. I didn't answer. I didn't need to hear the panic or the rage, didn't need to know if they were cursing me or crying. I already knew the script. I was the bad guy, the quitter, the one who couldn't handle it. Fine. Let them think that. I sat down at the little table in my studio, opened my laptop, and typed an email to Marissa. It wasn't long, just a few lines. I'm safe. I'm not coming back. If you need to contact me, speak to my lawyer. I didn't have a lawyer yet, but I'd get one soon enough. I hit send, shut the laptop, and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling. No apology, no excuses, no room for her to argue. That was it, the last thing I'd say to her for a while, maybe ever. The phone buzzed again, but I turned it off and tossed it on the couch. Outside, the sky was turning pink over the water, and I stepped onto the tiny balcony, breathing in the salty air. I could hear seagulls and the low hum of a boat somewhere far off. This was my life now, quiet, mine, no one else's rules. I didn't know how long it'd last, didn't know what they'd do next, but for those first 48 hours, I'd found something I hadn't had in years: peace. Silence wasn't just the absence of noise, it was the absence of their voices, their demands, their judgment. It said everything I couldn't put into words. I'd walked away, and I wasn't looking back. The waves kept rolling in, steady and sure, and I let them wash over me, drowning out the past one crash at a time. I'm Callum Ridgway, and after a week in Oregon, I started to feel like the dust was finally settling, not just around me, but inside me too. That little studio by the coast was home now, with its creaky floors and the salty breeze that slipped through the window every morning. I'd wake up to the sound of waves, make coffee in the chipped mug I'd bought from a thrift store, and sit at my table with my laptop, picking up freelance IT jobs to keep the bills paid. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine, and that was enough. Back in New York, I could only imagine what they were saying about me. Marissa's family had a way of turning everything into a story where they were the victims, and I was the villain who'd stormed out and left them all in ruins. He abandoned us. I could hear Blythe saying, her voice dripping with that fake hurt she was so good at. He was unstable, Gregory would add, smirking like he'd always known I'd crack. He couldn't handle the pressure, Marissa might say, quiet and sad, like she was disappointed but not surprised. I didn't have to guess too hard. I'd lived with their judgment long enough to know how they'd spin it. They'd sit around that big table at the estate, sipping wine and picking me apart, convincing themselves I'd been the problem all along. But I wasn't there to hear it, and that was the best part. I had people who saw it differently, though, my own witnesses, you could say. My sister, Ellie, had watched me shrink over the years, trying to fit into Marissa's world. She'd call me after every visit to their house, asking, "Why do you let them treat you like that?" I'd shrug it off, tell her it wasn't a big deal, but she knew better. My best friend Dorian was the same. He'd been there from the start, back when Marissa and I were just dating, and he'd seen me slowly disappear into the shadow of her family. "You're not yourself around them, man," he'd say, and I'd laugh it off, but he was right. They'd both tried to warn me, in their own ways, that I was losing something, myself, maybe, and now that I was gone, I could feel it coming back. Marissa didn't file for divorce, not right away, and that didn't surprise me. She wasn't the type to act fast. She'd wait, play it out, see if I'd break first. Blythe probably told her I'd come crawling back, tail between my legs, begging for forgiveness. They always do. I could hear her saying, all smug and certain, like I was some predictable stray dog. Gregory would back her up, saying I didn't have the guts to stay gone. They'd sit there, plotting how long it'd take me to crack, how many days before I showed up at the condo with an apology and a promise to behave. But days turned into weeks, and I didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up. I'd sent that one email, "I'm safe. I'm not coming back. Talk to my lawyer," and that was it. Radio silence from my end, and it drove them crazy, I bet. I could picture Marissa checking her phone, waiting for something that wasn't coming, her mother hovering over her shoulder, telling her to be patient. But I wasn't playing their game anymore. Out here, I was breathing again, really breathing, not just sucking in air between their jabs and expectations. The air in Oregon was clean, sharp with salt and pine, and it filled my lungs like it was washing out all the years I'd spent holding my breath. I'd walk the beach in the mornings, hands in my pockets, watching the waves roll in and out, and it was like they were smoothing over the rough edges inside me. I didn't need much, just my little place, my work, and the quiet. I deleted their voices from my phone, their faces from my head, and every day I stayed gone, I felt stronger, like I was building something new out of the pieces they'd tried to break. I thought about my mom sometimes, how she'd raised me and Ellie on her own after Dad died, working long shifts at the hospital to keep us fed. She never apologized for who she was, never bent to fit anyone else's idea of her, and I'd forgotten that about myself somewhere along the way. Marissa's family had made me feel small, like I had to prove I was worth something, but out here, I didn't have to prove a damn thing. The people I met, the guy at the grocery store, the lady who ran the coffee shop down the street, didn't care where I came from or who I'd married. They just nodded, said hi, and let me be. It was simple, and simple was freedom. I kept my phone off most of the time now, only turning it on to check in with Ellie or Dorian, who'd both cheered when I told them I'd left. About time, Ellie said, and Dorian just laughed, saying, I knew you had it in you. They were my anchors, the ones who reminded me I wasn't crazy for walking away. Marissa could wait all she wanted. Her family could spin their stories, but I wasn't going back. The dust had settled, and I was still standing stronger, quieter, and finally free. I'm Callum Ridgway, and 2 months after I landed in Oregon, I had to go back, not to stay, not to fix things, just to get what was mine. I'd been living light in that little coastal studio, working my freelance gigs, breathing the salty air, but there were things in the condo I couldn't leave behind forever. Not furniture or fancy stuff, Marissa could keep all that, but the small things that mattered. My mom's old books, a watch my dad gave me before he passed, a couple photos of me and Ellie when we were kids. Those were mine, legally and in every other way, and I wasn't letting them stay buried in her world. So I booked a cheap flight back to New York, rented a car at the airport, and drove to the condo on a gray Tuesday morning. The whole trip felt like walking into a memory I didn't want to relive, the familiar roads, the hum of the city, the weight of it all creeping back. I didn't tell anyone I was coming, not Marissa, not her family, not even Ellie or Dorian. I wanted it quick and quiet, in and out before they could turn it into a fight. The condo looked the same when I pulled up, sleek building, glass windows, the kind of place her money had picked out, not mine. I still had my key, and it turned in the lock easy enough, the doors swinging open to that sterile, expensive smell I'd never liked. The place was empty, or so I thought. Marissa's shoes weren't by the door. Her coat wasn't on the rack. I let out a breath and got to work, pulling a couple boxes from the closet and starting in the bedroom. I grabbed the books from my nightstand, the watch from the drawer, and a handful of clothes I didn't mind taking. It felt strange, being there without her voice in the background, without her eyes watching me like I was about to mess something up. I was halfway through packing when the door opened behind me. I froze, hands on a photo frame, and turned to see Marissa standing there. No warning, no call, just her in that little coat her mother gave her, the one that cost more than my truck. She looked the same, dark hair pulled back, face calm, but her eyes were wider than usual, like she hadn't expected me. Callum, she said, and her voice was soft, almost shaky. I nodded, keeping my hands busy with the box. Just getting my stuff, I said, not looking at her too long. She stepped inside, closing the door, and stood there like she didn't know what to do. You really meant it, she said, and it wasn't a question. I nodded again. Yeah. She moved closer, her boots clicking on the hardwood, and I could feel her trying to figure me out, like she always did. We can fix this, she said, and her voice had that practiced tone, the one she used when she thought she could talk me into anything. I shook my head, slow and sure, and kept packing. No, we can't. She went quiet then, and I thought maybe she'd leave, but she didn't. She just stood there, watching me fold a shirt, her arms crossed tight like she was holding herself together. You didn't even try, she said after a minute, and there was a bite to it now, a little of that anger I'd been waiting for. I stopped, looked at her straight on, and said, I tried for 7 years, Marissa. You didn't. Her mouth opened, then closed, like she wasn't sure how to argue that. I went back to the box, stacking the photos, feeling the air get heavier between us. You never fought for me, I said, keeping my voice steady even though it hurt to say it out loud. You fought to keep me in place, to keep me quiet, to keep them happy. But you never fought for me. She flinched, just a little, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, maybe guilt, maybe realization, but it was gone fast. That's not fair, she said, but it sounded weak, like she didn't believe it herself. I shrugged, taping up the box. Maybe not. But it's true. I picked up the second box, started on the living room, some old records, a mug I liked, and she followed me, hovering like she wanted to stop me but didn't know how. What am I supposed to tell them? She asked, and I knew she meant her family. I didn't look up. Whatever you want. I don't care anymore. That hit her. I could tell, because she went quiet again, longer this time. I kept moving, kept packing, and when I was done, I had 2 boxes and my bag, ready to go. She was still standing there, coat on, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Callum, she said, one last try, but I shook my head again. I'm done, Marissa. Take care. I walked past her, out the door, down the hall to the elevator. She didn't follow, didn't call after me, and when the doors closed, I felt that weight lift again. I drove straight to the airport, shipped the boxes to Oregon, and caught the next flight out. Back on the coast, I landed under a sky full of stars, the ocean waiting for me like it always did. That last visit didn't change anything. It just closed the door I'd already walked through. She still didn't get it, still thought it was about fixing something broken. But it wasn't. It was about letting go. I'm Callum Ridgway, and after I got back to Oregon from that last trip to New York, I started building something real, not just a life, but a version of myself I'd lost somewhere along the way. The boxes from the condo arrived a few days later, and I unpacked them slow, setting my mom's books on a shelf I'd picked up from a garage sale, hanging the photo of me and Ellie on the wall by the couch. The watch from my dad stayed in its box for now. I wasn't ready to wear it yet, but knowing it was there felt right. That little studio by the coast was starting to look like mine, not just a place to crash, and every piece I added made it feel more solid. I'd been freelancing since I got here, fixing people's tech problems online, but I decided to push it further, started advertising my services around town, handing out flyers at the coffee shop and the hardware store. Word spread quick, and soon I had steady clients, small businesses mostly, who liked that I didn't overcomplicate things or overcharge them. They didn't care that I wasn't from some big-name family or that I'd married into money they'd never see. They just cared that I showed up and got the job done. It was a kind of respect I hadn't felt in years, and it built me up, brick by brick, into someone I could stand to look at in the mirror. The town was small, but the people were good, honest in a way Marissa's crowd never was. I met a guy named Pete at the diner one morning, a fisherman with hands like sandpaper who'd nod at me over his coffee like we'd known each other forever. There was Sarah, who ran the coffee shop and always slipped me an extra muffin when I came in, saying, "You look like you could use it." They didn't ask about my past, didn't need to know my tax bracket or who I'd been married to, and that was a relief I didn't know I'd been craving. I started hanging out with them more, grabbing a beer with Pete after his boat came in, helping Sarah fix her ancient computer when it crashed. They became my people, not because I forced it, but because it just happened, natural and easy. I got back in touch with Ellie too, calling her one night after I'd settled in. She picked up on the first ring, her voice bright and loud. "Callum, you're alive." I laughed, told her about the studio, the ocean, the work I was doing. She said she was proud of me, and I could hear the truth in it. She'd been waiting for me to break free longer than I had. We talked about mom and dad, about how she was doing back home, and I promised I'd visit soon. It felt good, having her voice in my ear again, like a piece of my old self slotting back into place. I started hiking on weekends, following trails through the woods or along the cliffs, the kind of thing I'd never had time for back east. The air was sharp, the views wide, and it cleared my head in a way nothing else did. One Saturday, I stopped by the local shelter on a whim and came home with a dog, a scruffy mutt with one ear that stuck up funny. I named him Booker after nothing in particular, just a name that fit. He'd follow me everywhere, trotting along on walks or curling up by my feet while I worked. He didn't ask for much, just food, a pat on the head, a quick run on the beach, and giving him that made me feel steady, like I was good for something again. It's funny how the simplest things started to mean the most. I'd sit on my balcony at night, Booker snoring beside me, listening to the waves and watching the stars prick through the dark. The work was picking up. I was consulting full-time now, building systems for local shops, troubleshooting networks, and people trusted me, relied on me, without needing to know my whole story. I traded the condo's polished floors for this creaky little place, the city noise for the ocean's hum, and it wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I'd spent so long in Marissa's shadow, bending to fit her family's rules, that I'd forgotten what it felt like to stand up straight. Out here, I didn't have to explain myself, didn't have to apologize for where I came from or what I didn't have. Pete would slap me on the back and say, "Good to have you around, Cal," and Sarah would grin when I fixed her printer, and that was enough. Booker would nudge my hand with his wet nose, and I'd laugh, scratching his ears, thinking how easy it was to make him happy. I'd found peace. Not the loud, dramatic kind, but the quiet sort that sinks in slow and stays. It was in the salt air, the steady rhythm of my days, the way I could hear myself think again. I was rebuilding, one small piece at a time, and every brick I laid felt like a step away from the man I'd been, the one who'd begged for a seat at a table that never wanted him. I'm Callum Ridgway, and after months of quiet in Oregon, the past started creeping back, not loud or crashing in, but soft, like echoes I couldn't quite shake. I'd built a good rhythm out here, work, walks with Booker, coffee with Sarah, beers with Pete, and it felt solid, like the life I'd always wanted but didn't know I could have. The studio was home now, with its thrift store shelves and the sound of the ocean keeping me company at night. I'd stopped checking my phone for messages from Marissa or her family, stopped bracing for their next move. I thought I'd left them behind for good, but then one morning, I opened my laptop and saw an email from her. It wasn't much, just a few lines, no subject, but it stopped me cold. I sat there at my little table, coffee going cold in my hands, staring at her name on the screen. Part of me wanted to delete it unread, keep the peace I'd fought so hard for, but another part, the stubborn part, maybe clicked it open. She didn't beg me to come back, didn't try to guilt me like her mother would have. It was simpler than that, sadder too. "I see it now, Callum," she wrote. How it unraveled. "I was so busy trying to keep them happy, Mom, Gregory, all of them, that I didn't see I was losing you. I'm sorry." That was it. No promises, no pleas, just regret laid out plain and quiet. I read it twice, then leaned back in my chair, letting it sink in. Booker nosed at my leg, whining for his walk, but I just sat there, staring at the words. It wasn't anger that hit me. I'd burned through that months ago. It was something else, a kind of tired ache. She saw it now, she said, but where was that clarity when I was standing in front of her, asking her to choose me? Where was it when I was packing my bag, waiting for her to say something, anything, to stop me? I didn't reply. Not because I was mad, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because there was nothing left to say. Silence felt truer than any words I could send back. It was the answer she'd never heard when I was still there, still trying. I closed the laptop, grabbed Booker's leash, and took him out to the beach, letting the wind and the waves drown out the echo of her email. The sand was cold under my boots, and Booker ran ahead, chasing gulls, while I walked slow, hands in my pockets, thinking it over. She'd lost me long before I left, and I'd lost her too, somewhere between her family's rules and my own breaking point. That email didn't change anything. It just confirmed what I already knew. I was done carrying her regret along with mine. A few months later, another letter came, this time in the mail, handwritten on thick paper that smelled faintly of Blythe's perfume. I knew it was from her before I even opened it. Marissa didn't write letters, but her mother loved the drama of it. I stood by the mailbox, the ocean rumbling in the distance, and tore it open. "Callum," it started, all formal and sharp. "You broke my daughter's heart. You walked away from your responsibilities, from our family, and left her to pick up the pieces. I hope you're proud of yourself." The rest was more of the same. Condescension dripping from every line, blaming me like I'd torched their perfect little world. I read it once, standing there in the wind, then walked inside and fed it to the shredder by my desk. The machine whirred, chewing it up, and I watched the pieces fall into the trash, feeling nothing but relief. Blythe didn't get it, never would. She thought I'd broken Marissa, but Marissa had broken herself, choosing them over me every chance she got. I wasn't proud of leaving, but I wasn't ashamed either. It was what I had to do to breathe again. I didn't know her an answer, didn't know her anything anymore. The shredder clicked off, and I took Booker for another walk, letting the salt air clear my head. Those echoes, Marissa's email, Blythe's letter, kept coming, but they didn't stick. I'd built too much here to let them pull me back. Work was steady now, my clients relying on me, and I liked the weight of that, the way it kept me grounded. Pete and I had started fishing on weekends, just a little boat, and some quiet hours on the water, and Sarah would tease me about my sunburn when I came into the shop after. Ellie called sometimes, telling me about her life back east, and I'd tell her about Booker's latest trick or the view from my balcony. It was small, this world I'd made, but it was solid, and it didn't bend to anyone else's rules. The past could echo all it wanted. Marissa could regret, Blythe could rage, but I wasn't listening anymore. I'd found my footing, one step at a time, and every day I stayed gone, those voices got quieter. I'd sit out on the bluff some nights, watching the waves crash under the stars, and feel the truth settle in. I didn't need their forgiveness, didn't need their understanding. I had this. The ocean, the dog, the people who didn't care where I'd come from, and it was enough. I'm Callum Ridgway, and it's been a year since I walked out of that big house in New York, a year since I bought that one-way ticket to Oregon and decided to stop explaining myself. The divorce is final now, papers signed, lawyers paid, all the loose ends tied up neat and clean. I live in a modest place on a bluff overlooking the Pacific, a step up from the studio but still simple, with a porch where I can sit and watch the water stretch out forever. I wake up early most days, make coffee, and take Booker for a walk along the shore before I settle into work, still in tech, still fixing systems and solving problems, but on my terms now. The air's always got that salty bite to it, and the sound of the waves is a constant, like a heartbeat I've gotten used to. It's not a flashy life, but it's mine, and that's the biggest change of all. I don't answer to anyone anymore. Back when I left, Marissa wanted an apology, wanted me to bend one last time to fit her world, but I chose the ticket instead, and I've never looked back. The condo, her family, that whole suffocating mess, it's a memory now, fading a little more every day I spend out here. I think about it sometimes, how I spent 7 years trying to be what they wanted, twisting myself into knots to prove I was good enough. Her mother, Blythe, with her cold stares and sharper words, Gregory with his smirks and jabs, and Marissa, caught between them and me, always picking their side when it mattered. I used to wonder if I could have fought harder, stayed longer, but out here, with the ocean in front of me and Booker at my feet, I know I did the right thing. Leaving wasn't running, it was saving myself. The divorce took months to sort out, longer than it should have, because Marissa dragged her feet. She didn't fight it outright, didn't show up with lawyers screaming, but she stalled, missed deadlines, asked for extensions, like she thought I'd change my mind if she waited me out. I didn't. My lawyer handled most of it, and I kept my distance, sending emails when I had to, keeping it short and to the point. When the final papers came through, I signed them at my kitchen table, the pen scratching loud in the quiet, and felt a weight lift I didn't know was still there. It was done. No more ties, no more claims, just me and the life I'd built. Out here, I've got my routines, work in the mornings, hikes or fishing with Pete on weekends, coffee with Sarah when she's not swamped at the shop. Ellie came to visit once, stayed a week, and we sat on the porch every night, talking about everything and nothing. She said I looked different, lighter, and I told her I felt it too. Booker's grown into himself, still scruffy but smarter now, and he's my shadow, follows me from room to room, sleeps by the door like he's guarding it. The people in town know me, not my whole story, just the parts one share, and they don't ask for more. Pete calls me Cal, like it's always been my name, and Sarah started trusting me with the shop's books when her numbers don't add up. It's a community, not forced or fake, just people living their lives alongside mine. I don't explain myself anymore, not to them, not to anyone. That's the real freedom, the thing I didn't know I'd lost until I got it back. Back in New York, I was always justifying why I did what I did, why I wasn't like them, why I deserved a seat at their table. Here, no one cares. I show up, I do my work, I crack a beer with Pete or toss a stick for Booker, and that's enough. I don't owe anyone my story, don't have to prove I'm worth something. Marissa's family thought love came with conditions: obey, fit in, apologize when you step out of line. But I've learned it doesn't have to. Ellie loves me because I'm her brother, Pete because I'm a friend, Booker because I'm his person. It's simple, and simple's what I needed all along. I think about Marissa sometimes, wonder what she's doing now that the papers are signed. Maybe she's still in the condo, still going to those family dinners, still trying to keep Blythe happy. Her email from months back, the one about regret, sits unanswered in my inbox, and I've never felt the need to change that. She made her choice back then, picking them over me, and I made mine when I walked out. We're even now, in a way, both free to live how we want, just not together. I don't hate her, don't even resent her anymore. It's just done. The Bluff's my home now, with its wide views and quiet nights, and every day I spend here, I feel more like the man I was supposed to be. I work hard, keep things easy, and let the ocean smooth out the rest. No apologies, no looking back, just me, my dog, my people, and a life I built my way. I woke up that morning feeling something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Not excitement exactly, but something close. I don't usually care about birthdays. I've spent too many of them buried in work emails or pretending to enjoy half-burnt cakes. But this one was different. Mira had been whispering about it for weeks. My wife, the same woman who once forgot our anniversary, had been oddly affectionate lately. She even bought me a new blazer last weekend and said, "It's for your big day." When I asked what that meant, she just smiled. Wait and see. My parents were in on it too. My mother, Teresa, had called me twice that week. And Teresa does not call without a reason. "Don't you dare make plans for Friday night," she warned me in that dramatic tone of hers. "We've got something very special planned." My father, Harold, the king of sarcasm, even looked serious when he called the day before. "Don't eat lunch tomorrow. Trust me." That alone was enough to raise suspicion. So I blocked out my schedule, cleared my calendar, and even turned down a dinner invitation from Malik, one of my oldest friends. "It's my 45th, I told him. "I think my family's actually doing something for once." He teased me, of course. Miracles do happen, huh? Around 4 p.m., Mira texted me, "Dress nice. You'll love it." I smiled at my phone like a schoolboy. I had picked out a rooftop bar I always loved, Overlook Lounge. A cozy, stylish place with city views that make you feel taller than your problems. The kind of place where, for a few hours, the world slows down. I arrived early. The staff had my name on a reservation list. Private booth, corner view, bottle service. Someone had gone all out. The hostess led me to a beautifully set table. Candles, chilled champagne, name cards. I assumed guests were just running late. My phone had no missed calls. I texted Mira, "Here. It looks amazing." No reply. So I sat. And I waited. 30 minutes passed. I opened the menu. I didn't want to seem nervous, but the server could tell something was off. "Would you like to order while you wait?" he asked politely. No, I'm good. "Just waiting for a few people," I said. An hour. I started to feel cold, even though it was warm. Not from the weather, but from something inside. That kind of chill that creeps into your chest when the facts start forming a picture you don't want to see. I tried calling Mira. Straight to voicemail. I called my mom. No answer. My dad. Same thing. Then my phone buzzed. New message from Mira. It was a video. I tapped it, thinking maybe they were late and this was a funny prelude. Maybe they were in the parking lot. Maybe they were walking in now, with balloons and some silly speech. No. The video started with sunlight reflecting off Venetian water. Gondolas drifting. Laughter. Then, Mira appeared in the frame, wine glass in hand, looking radiant and unbothered. My mother was behind her, raising a glass. My father, oddly cheerful, clinked his wine with Brent, my cousin. Mira smiled directly into the camera. "To Julian," she said. "He's probably wondering where we are." Surprised. Everyone burst into laughter. "He won't be hurt by this," Mira added, tossing her hair like she was in a commercial. "He'll be fine. He always is." The camera panned to a group toast. Cheers, clinks, wide smiles. Then the video ended. I sat there in complete silence. The hum of nearby conversations suddenly felt like static. The clink of other people's glasses like sirens. It wasn't just that they were gone. It was that they had planned this. Planned to vanish. Planned to laugh. On my birthday. They didn't forget. No, this was intentional. I looked around at the table again. How stupid I must have looked to the staff. To anyone who saw me dressed in that new blazer, thinking I was the guest of honor. I took a deep breath and told myself not to react. Not here. Not now. The server returned. "Shall I open the champagne, sir?" I stared at him for a second too long. Then I nodded. "Yeah, open it. If they wanted to leave me alone on my birthday, fine. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of breaking down in public. I would finish the drink. I would sit at this table. And I would make a mental note of every detail. Because this wasn't just a surprise. It was a warning. They thought I wouldn't be hurt? They were wrong. But what they'd really misjudged was this. I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to beg for answers. I wasn't going to yell, cry, or demand an explanation. Instead, I was going to remember how this moment felt, the weight of the glass in my hand, the sting of betrayal in my chest, the silence in my phone. I was going to remember this table, this view, and this night for the rest of my life. Because if this was their surprise, they hadn't seen mine yet. For a while, I just sat there, numb. The champagne was open now. It tasted bitter. Not from the grapes or bubbles, but from the ache in my chest that wouldn't go away. I stared at the glass like it held answers. How long had they been planning this? How many times had I paid for dinner while they sat around a table laughing about the surprise? I kept watching the rooftop door, half expecting Mira to burst in and say, "Just kidding." But the longer I waited, the more foolish I felt. A waiter approached me again, this time with a quiet sort of pity in his eyes. "Sir," he said gently, "do you want to cancel the rest of the reservation? We could refund." "No," I said quickly, cutting him off. "Leave it. I'm still celebrating." I didn't even believe the words when I said them. But I said them anyway. Maybe because saying anything else would have felt like surrender. I poured another glass. My phone was still silent. No new texts. No follow-up message. Just the video, still sitting there, waiting to be replayed like a slap to the face. I could have left. Gone home. Curled up with a blanket and a headache and the soft glow of betrayal. But I didn't. Instead, I took a photo of myself, smiling with the skyline behind me. I even raised my glass. A forced smile, sure. But I've worn worse masks in my life. I posted it to my story with the caption, "Still worth celebrating." I don't even know why I did it. Maybe to convince myself. Maybe to send a message. Maybe both. I took another sip. Time moved like syrup. At some point, I stopped checking my watch. I told the waiter to bring food, even though I wasn't hungry. I just didn't want to look pathetic, sitting there with nothing but a half-empty bottle and a broken heart. That's when I heard a familiar voice. "Julian? What the hell, man? Are you here alone?" I looked up. Malik. Of all the people to walk into that bar, it was Malik Johnson. College roommate. One-time best man. The kind of friend you don't see for months, but pick right back up with when you do. He stood there in a dark green shirt and jeans, eyes wide, holding a gift bag in one hand and his phone in the other. "I saw your story," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thought it was a joke." "It's not," I muttered, trying to smile. Apparently the joke was on me. He didn't laugh. Instead, he looked around, took in the fancy table, the unopened desserts, the extra seats. "So where's Mira?" "Your folks." "In Venice," I said flatly. His eyebrows shot up. "What?" I handed him my phone. He watched the video in silence, his mouth slowly twisting into a tight line. When it ended, he set the phone down and said, "These people are out of their damn minds." I nodded, but didn't speak. Because what was there to say? He stood up suddenly. "You're not spending this birthday like this. Not on my watch. I know a couple people in the building. Give me 15. I wanted to argue. Tell him I didn't want a pity party. But the truth was, I didn't want to be alone either. So I just nodded. 15 minutes turned into 40. And just like that, my quiet, shame-soaked table became something else entirely. Malik came back with 3 friends, 2 women, and a guy from his office. They were loud, funny, and didn't ask too many questions. They bought another bottle. They danced to music from a nearby speaker. One of the women, Jasmine, insisted on taking a selfie with me. "You've got great cheekbones," she said. I laughed for the first time all night. More people joined. Malik posted something on his feed, last-minute birthday bash for a real one, and tagged me. Soon, a few more friends from work dropped in. I didn't know how it was happening, but the table filled up. People ordered appetizers. Someone ordered cake. A stranger handed me a cigar and said, "You look like you need this." And weirdly, I did. I started to loosen up. The music felt warmer. The food had taste again. I told stories from college. Someone toasted to the birthday legend who survived abandonment and turned it into a vibe. I clinked glasses with people I didn't even know the names of. And somewhere between the third drink and the shared dessert plate, I felt something shift. The grief didn't vanish, but it stopped being a wall. It became a room I could stand in without suffocating. I didn't check my phone for hours. When I finally did, I had to scroll through the missed calls. At first it was 1 or 2 from Mira, then 10, then 15, then a flurry of calls from my mom, then Brent, even Harold. By midnight, The total was 74 missed calls. I turned on airplane mode and slid the phone back into my jacket. The irony of it all. The one night I wasn't waiting by the phone was the night it wouldn't stop ringing. But I didn't respond. Not that night. Maybe not ever. I left the bar around 2 a.m. Malik walked me to the curb, slung an arm over my shoulder. Next year, he said, we do this on purpose. I'll hold you to that. He nodded, then added, they don't deserve your silence. But they damn sure don't deserve your voice either. That stuck with me. When I got home, I took off the blazer Mira gave me, hung it in the back of the closet. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around the room, the framed photos of vacations, the art she picked out, the candles I always hated. It didn't feel like my home anymore. I lay back on the bed, shoes still on, and stared at the ceiling. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a husband, or a son, or a wallet. I felt like a man. And in the quiet of that moment, I made a decision, not to get even, not to strike back, but to walk forward, with clarity, with silence, with power. Because if they thought that video would be the final word on who I was, they forgot something important. I'm still here, and I'm just getting started. It's strange, isn't it? How the signs were all there, bright as daylight. But you only see them clearly when you stop pretending not to. After that night on the rooftop, I began looking back. Not just at the birthday, not just at the video, but at everything leading up to it. And once I started tracing the timeline, the picture formed quickly. I had been living with a house full of whispers, but I had convinced myself they were wind. It started months earlier, really. The silence when I entered a room, the sudden closing of laptops, the screen brightness turned down, the quick, forced laughs whenever I asked, what's so funny? Mira always had a reason. Just a meme, she'd say. A stupid group chat. I believed her, or maybe I just didn't care to argue. That's the thing about love. You keep telling yourself there's nothing behind the curtain because the alternative hurts too much. But now, I see it all. Sunday dinners became uncomfortable. Not for any obvious reason, but because the energy changed. My mother, Teresa, would stare at me with this strange smile, like she was in on a joke. A smug, knowing smirk that stayed even when I tried to change the subject. She'd say things like, you'll thank us soon, or trust me, this year will surprise you. I thought maybe they were just excited for the birthday plan. Maybe they were cooking up something sweet. I didn't realize they were sharpening knives and wrapping them in ribbons. Even Brent, my cousin who never cared about anyone but himself, started acting like he knew something I didn't. Get ready to have your mind blown, he told me one day while passing through my house to pick up a charger Mira I'd borrowed. I laughed at the time, thought maybe it was a family trip surprise or something harmless. He winked on his way out. It wasn't a wink of kindness. It was a wink of someone who had watched the trap door being built and couldn't wait to see me fall through it. Tristan, Myra's brother, was another one. He had started skipping work more often. When I asked if everything was okay, he brushed it off with that lazy charm of his. Just enjoying life a little, he said. You should try it too. Later, I found out he was skipping work to help Mira finalize travel bookings. Paid for, of course, with my money. I should have known. Mira had stopped asking me about finances months ago. Not because she didn't care, but because she already knew the answers. She had the passwords. She had the cards. She had the freedom. Looking back, even our bedroom had changed. She used to curl up next to me and hum little songs before falling asleep. Somewhere in the last year, that stopped. I didn't even notice when. One night, I looked up and realized I hadn't touched her in weeks. Maybe longer. The warmth was gone. She started sleeping facing the other way, always with her phone close to her chest like a diary full of sins. I remember reaching out once, touching her back gently. She shifted forward, away from my hand. Long day, she said. That was all. There's this thing that happens when someone slowly stops loving you. It's not an explosion. It's erosion. A soft, daily wearing down of affection, of connection. You don't hear it. You don't feel it at first. But one day, you realize there's a hole where something used to be. A presence. A heartbeat. A soul. After the birthday disaster, I started moving through my own house like a stranger. Mira hadn't come back yet, but her energy was still there. The smell of her perfume on the couch pillow. Her half-used hairbrush on the sink. Her robe hanging behind the door. I would walk into rooms and still expect her voice. But there was nothing. Just my own footsteps. And then came the emails. I started checking our shared desktop, the one in the living room. She'd gotten too comfortable. Didn't clear the browser history. Didn't close her accounts. That's where I saw it, the travel itinerary. Flights booked 3 weeks before my birthday. Hotel reservations in Florence. Group chat emails with subject lines like Operation Surprise Ghost. Photos of passport scans. Not mine, of course. Just hers, my parents, Brent's, and Tristan's. The whole group. Every single one of them knew. Planned. Agreed. And not one of them thought to even send me a proper message. Just that stupid video. I remember sitting at that desk, staring at the screen, heart pounding like it was trying to fight its way out. My hand hovered over the mouse for a long time. My thumb kept flicking against the edge of the table. That nervous tick I get when I'm trying to swallow rage. I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I had nothing left. No tears. Just this dry, aching hollowness. There was also a thread from Mira to my mother. Mira, do you think he'll get mad? Teresa, he doesn't get mad. He gets quiet. Then he moves on. Trust me, that one did it. That made something snap. That's when I realized who I had become to them. Not a husband. Not a son. Just a body. A source of money. A background character. Quiet. Safe. Predictable. Easy to laugh at. Easy to use. They thought I was weak because I didn't shout. Because I didn't throw things or slam doors. Because I made peace, stayed calm, paid bills, didn't pry. They mistook grace for passivity. Dignity for weakness. But what they didn't realize is that silence, real silence, can be the sharpest weapon in the world. Especially when it belongs to a man who sees everything and says nothing, until it's too late. That night, I didn't sleep in the bedroom. I slept on the couch. Not because I was kicked out, but because I couldn't breathe in that room anymore. Her ghost was everywhere. The laughter that no longer included me. The secrets told under the covers. The lies whispered through the walls. I stared at the ceiling, my eyes tracing the shadow of the fan blades. Around and around. The air felt too still, like the whole house was holding its breath. I thought about packing a bag. About leaving. About vanishing the way they had. But then I thought, no, let them come back to find me still here. Let them walk into this house expecting the same ghost. And find a man they never saw coming. The day after I found those emails, I sat at the kitchen table with my bank app open, scrolling through months of transactions like I was reviewing a crime scene. And maybe I was. Because what I saw didn't just confirm my suspicions, it dragged them into the daylight and burned them into my memory. I had been funding my own betrayal. Quietly. Willingly. Stupidly. First, there was a $1,200 charge to a planning firm Mira had insisted was for my birthday celebration. I remember her saying it would be something small but elegant. Just enough to remind you how loved you are. What she didn't say was that the planner specialized in international retreats. That same planner also booked travel packages for Florence and Venice, according to their website. I stared at the charge and laughed, a bitter, quiet sound that echoed in the kitchen. Then there were the flights. 2 sets of tickets to Rome and Florence on the same day, booked weeks apart under the family travel account. That account had always been in my name. Always. It started when I began managing the finances after my dad retired early. My parents had trouble staying organized, and I thought I was helping. Every time I paid their bills, booked their flights, or covered one of Brent's college debts, they acted grateful. Said things like, "Julian, we don't know how we'd survive without you." Now I knew the truth. They could survive without me just fine. They just couldn't exploit me without my help. For $1,860. That's how much had been spent in the last 10 days. Flights, hotels, a wine tasting in Tuscany, and it was all there in black and white. Not hidden, not masked. Just sitting in plain sight like a slap across the face. Mira never asked permission. My mother never said a word. Brent, of course, never thanked me. He never even texted. Why would he? I was just the wallet. The machine. The quiet guy in the corner whose money solved everyone's problems. That night, I walked into our bedroom and stared at Myra's vanity. On it sat a necklace I bought her for our anniversary, a delicate gold piece she had gushed over at the store but hadn't worn once since. I picked it up, turned it in my fingers, and for a moment, imagined handing it back to her and saying, "Here. This is the last thing you'll ever get from me." But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I opened her drawer and pulled out the little blue folder she kept our joint financial files in. I flipped through receipts, statements, scribbled notes. There was one from 3 months ago, a spa package for 2. Mira said she went with a friend named Alina. But now I knew better. There was no Alina. There never had been. Just like there was no mystery planner or secret party. It wasn't just the spending. It was the way they all expected I wouldn't notice. Like I was too dull, too distracted, too forgiving. Mira used to joke that I had the soul of an accountant, organized, careful, detached. What she didn't know was that accountants don't forget. They remember every cent, every line item, every betrayal disguised as a favor. I sat in the living. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. I thought about all the things I had paid for over the years, Myra's car, the down payment on Brent's apartment, the luxury cruise my parents took last summer. I had justified it all as family, as love, as support. But that's the trick, isn't it? The people who hurt you the most are always the ones who tell you they need you. I checked the credit card logs again. There it was, another purchase Mira made just 5 days before they left. A boutique shop in Florence. A deposit. She hadn't even left the country yet, but had already paid for a dress she planned to pick up overseas. I leaned back in the chair and let the air leave my lungs slowly. This wasn't carelessness. It was confidence. She knew I wouldn't question it. She knew I wouldn't stop her. That's what hurt the most. I opened the browser again. Searched the boutique. There was a photo of the shop, tucked into a cobblestone alley, glowing with warm lights and romance. In the window was a mannequin wearing a silk dress, soft blue with gold embroidery. Mira had described that exact dress to me once, months ago, when we were watching an old Italian film. She'd whispered, if we ever go to Florence, that's what I'd wear. I remember saying, we should go sometime. But she had gone without me, worn the dream without me, lived the life we planned without me. And worse, she used my hands to pay for it. That night, I sat in the bathroom staring at my reflection. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just looked, long and hard. My eyes were tired, my face drawn, my mouth downturned, even in rest. But beneath all that weariness, I saw something new. Resolve. I realized something no one had ever told me growing up. Sometimes love blinds you, not because it's bright, but because it's quiet. Because it teaches you to endure instead of question, to give instead of guard. But I was done enduring, done giving without being seen. They had erased me from their celebration. So now, I would erase them from my generosity. The next morning, I called the travel agent listed on the planning firm's invoice. I introduced myself, gave my name, and asked a simple question. Was this charged to my account? The woman on the other end hesitated. Yes, she said. Booked under Julian Cross. Is there an issue? No issue, I said calmly. Just confirmation. Thank you. Then I opened my laptop and logged into every account. Bank, credit, savings, travel. I started changing passwords, locking cards, canceling add-on users. One by one, quietly, surgically, like pulling leeches off your skin, careful not to let the head stay buried. I opened a spreadsheet and made a list. Every expense, every name, every betrayal. And then, beneath it, I wrote one final line. No more. They forgot to thank me because they never thought they'd need to. Now, they're about to remember why they should have. After I locked all the accounts and changed every password, I didn't say a word. Not to Mira, not to my parents, not even to Brent. Silence became my shield. And oddly enough, it felt like the first time I was really in control. When you're the quiet one in a group, people think you're weak. They mistake stillness for surrender. But what they forget is that silence listens. And I had been listening for a long time. That morning, I made myself a cup of black coffee and stood by the window, watching the light shift across the buildings. The house was still. Mira hadn't returned yet, but I knew they were back in the country. My inbox had exploded. Missed calls, voicemails, texts, even a few emails titled things like, "We should talk," or "Let's clear this up." I didn't open any of them. I didn't need to. Whatever they had to say, I'd already heard the truth in their laughter. I posted a photo instead. Something simple. Me on the balcony, wearing a clean black shirt, holding a glass of scotch, city skyline behind me. The caption read, "Still celebrating. Thanks to the real ones." I didn't tag anyone. I didn't explain anything. But within 10 minutes, the calls doubled. Mira, my mother, Brent, even Harold, who hasn't called me on his own in years. Suddenly, everyone wanted to talk. They were all worried, not because I was hurt, but because I wasn't reacting the way they expected. They were bracing for a tantrum, a meltdown, some dramatic plea to be included again. But I gave them silence instead. And silence, it turns out, is terrifying when it comes from the one you thought you had under control. Mira left 4 voicemails that morning. Hey, can you call me back? This is all being blown out of proportion. It was supposed to be a joke. You know, like a funny surprise. I didn't think you'd take it so personally. Then later, Julian, please. Everyone's upset now. My mom says you're being dramatic. Just call me. And finally, you're scaring people. Brent says you haven't responded to anyone. This isn't like you. What are you doing? I stared at the phone for a long time after that one. What am I doing? I'm thinking. I'm watching. I'm giving you the quiet you thought you wanted. Until you realized it meant you were no longer in control. Teresa, my mother, texted, we were only trying to shake things up. You've been so disconnected lately. We thought a bold gesture would wake you up. I read that one 5 times. Wake me up? You thought erasing me, mocking me, laughing at my absence on my own birthday, would wake me up? I left her message unread. Brent sent a voice note. I didn't listen to it. The man once cried to me over a broken lease, and I bailed him out. I co-signed a loan when no one else would. Now he wanted to explain? He could keep his voice to himself. The most surreal part of the whole thing was how quickly the roles reversed. I used to chase their approval, try to be the reliable one, the steady son, the helpful husband. Now, with one quiet post and no responses, I had all of them rattled. I walked around the house that day and realized how different everything looked in silence. The dining room table where we had shared dinners suddenly looked too polished, too staged. The couch we cuddled on during movies felt cold, too neat. The hallway photos, smiling vacations, posed portraits felt like fiction. It's amazing how quickly love can rot when you finally see the mold beneath the paint. I sat at the desk and started organizing everything. Legal documents, account records, passwords. I made copies, put them in a separate folder, and locked it away. I wasn't just cleaning house. I was clearing space for clarity, for change. That evening, I received a text from Malik. Malik, just saw your post. Proud of you, man. Let me know if you need anything. That was it. Simple, clean, real. I replied with a thumbs up and didn't feel the need to explain. He knew. Some friends don't need backstory. They just understand the temperature of silence. Around 8:30 p.m., Mira called again. I didn't answer. She left another voicemail. Julian, I just landed. I'm heading home. Please don't make this ugly. That made me laugh out loud. I was making it ugly? I poured another scotch and sat down in the den. I left the lights off. I wanted to sit in the quiet, to hear the pulse of the house as it used to be, before the lies started piling up like dust. Before love turned into obligation. Before trust became debt. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. And for once, it wasn't racing. I was calm. That night, I drafted a document outlining every financial account I planned to restructure. Myra's name would be removed. Automatic payments for anything with her name or her family's would stop. The credit cards? Gone. The joint checking? Closed. Access to the investment accounts? Denied. It wasn't about revenge. It was about respect. I wasn't punishing them. I was simply correcting a mistake, one I'd let fester for too long. By midnight, I had a list of everything I controlled and everything I would sever. I labeled the list, reset, and that word felt powerful. They thought silence was surrender, but they forgot what silence really is, preparation. The thing about being underestimated for so long is that eventually, people forget what you're truly capable of. They start treating you like background noise. A prop in their story. A man who nods, pays, and stays quiet. But they always forget the most dangerous ones are the quiet ones. And I've been quiet for too long. What Mira never realized, what none of them knew, really was that I had stopped being just the husband years ago. I wasn't just the man who fixed the garbage disposal or paid off Brent's emergency loans. I was the majority shareholder in the company where Myra's brother Tristan worked. The one he constantly bragged about at family dinners. We're building something big, he'd say. The company's growing fast. Yeah, it was. And I was the reason why. 3 years ago, I invested quietly, bought shares through a private firm, sat on it, watched it grow. Then last year, when one of the co-founders left, I stepped in, quietly again, took a larger stake. By January, I was quietly voted in as executive director. Tristan never connected the dots. He thought I was just some mild-mannered investor his boss liked. He never knew I was the one signing his bonus approvals, his time-off slips, his promotions. So imagine my expression when I got an internal HR alert. Tristan Grady, unauthorized time off. 7 consecutive days without prior approval. I clicked on the report. Sure enough, he had told HR he was taking a short medical leave. But the pictures he posted on his public account said otherwise. Sipping cocktails in Florence. Shirtless selfies on boats. Hashtags like hashtag living my best life and hashtag family first trip. The nerve. He didn't even try to hide it. Probably assumed no one would notice. I could have flagged it immediately. Could have sent it straight to the disciplinary committee. But I didn't. Not yet. I saved the report, printed it out, and placed it in a folder. That folder already held records of Myra's recent charges, joint account freezes, and a growing list of everything I'd discovered since that birthday night. I wasn't ready to strike. I wanted them to feel safe for just a little longer. I went into the office the next day, sat in the corner of the executive floor, in the glass-walled office no one ever thought belonged to me. I greeted everyone politely. Didn't mention Tristan's name once. Let him believe all was well. Let the whole world keep thinking I was just a tired husband who got forgotten on his birthday. Let them all sip espresso and pretend nothing was unraveling beneath them. I wasn't just pulling back my money. I was reclaiming my presence. You see, I had built more than wealth. I had built reach, contacts, influence. The kind Mira never thought I had because I didn't talk about it over dinner. While she showed off designer bags and curated Instagram stories, I built silent partnerships and equity. While she laughed with her friends about how boring I was sitting across from decision-makers who ran circles around her flashy lifestyle. One of them, Raymond, was on the board with me. An older guy. Sharp. He pulled me aside in the elevator and asked, "So, I hear your in-laws are making a bit of a splash overseas." I raised my eyebrows. "That's so. Let's just say some people forget who signs their checks," he replied, patting my shoulder. I didn't reply. I didn't have to. By lunchtime, I had submitted a quiet motion to freeze any pending bonuses across Tristan's division. HR would take it from there. Discreet, respectful, but firm. He would get a call in 2 days. A formal inquiry. Nothing flashy. Just enough to let him feel the ground shift beneath his feet. That evening, I returned home to find Mira in the kitchen. She was back early, dressed in that sky blue silk dress, the one she said she dreamed of buying if she ever went to Florence. She wore it like a trophy, like a symbol. I looked at her standing there, stirring pasta like nothing had happened. She smiled over her shoulder. I thought we could eat and talk. I didn't say anything, just set my briefcase down and walked past her to the living room. She followed, wiping her hands on a towel. "Julian, I know you're mad, but it was just supposed to be fun. You've been so distant lately, and I thought maybe a reset would help." I turned to face her. Calm, clear. "You planned a vacation and left me out of it." "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "It was spontaneous." "No," I said. "It was organized. You used my accounts. You used my name. You made bookings in advance. You lied." Her smile faded. She stood straighter. "So what now? You're going to punish me?" I tilted my head. "No. I'm going to free myself from you." She blinked, caught off guard. "What does that mean?" "It means," I said slowly, "I'm no longer giving myself to people who see me as a wallet, or a background character, or someone who doesn't get angry." She crossed her arms. "Don't be dramatic." I smiled then. A small, tired smile. "You called me dramatic after stealing my birthday and calling it a surprise." She tried again. "Julian, you're making this bigger than it needs to be. Just tell me what you want. I can fix it." "No," I said firmly. "You can't. Because this isn't broken. It's exposed." Her face changed then. Fear crept in. She knew something had shifted. I picked up the folder I'd placed on the table earlier. "Tristan will be hearing from HR soon. Just a heads up. Tell him to prepare." Her eyes widened. "You wouldn't." "I already did." She stepped forward. "Julian, please. That's my brother. And you're my wife," I replied. "At least, you used to be." I left her standing there. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. Because the most powerful thing I had learned was this. I didn't have to raise my voice to raise my worth. 3 days after the video. 3 days after the rooftop dinner I spent alone. 3 days after I froze accounts, documented every betrayal, and went completely silent. That's when they came back. I had just returned from the office, my jacket still on, keys in hand, when I heard voices in the hallway. Laughter. Familiar footsteps. The sound of suitcases rolling. Myra's high heels tapping across the floor like nothing had happened. My heart didn't race. I didn't panic. I just stood in the center of the living room and waited. The door opened like it always did. Mira entered first, pushing the door with her hip, sunglasses still on her face, a shopping bag looped around her wrist. Behind her was Teresa, holding a small box of pastries from that overpriced bakery she loved. Then came my father, Harold, wearing the same beige polo and smug expression he always wore after a trip. Brent trailed behind with his usual half-smirk, like he was the star of some movie playing in his head. They all walked in like nothing was wrong, like I hadn't watched a video of them laughing at me from across the ocean. Mira was the first to speak. "Julian, good, you're home." She walked up and tried to kiss my cheek. I took a small step back. She blinked but didn't say anything. Teresa placed the bakery box on the table like it was some kind of peace offering. "We brought cannoli," she said, as if dessert would fix betrayal. Harold chuckled and clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't be sore, son. It was just a playful trip." I looked at them one by one. My eyes didn't burn. My hands didn't shake. I was too far past shock to be emotional now. I was in that place beyond pain, where clarity lives. Where truth hits so hard, it knocks the feeling out of you and replaces it with purpose. "Julian," Mira said again, her voice softer this time. "We wanted to surprise you. We thought it would be funny, to flip the script. Show you that you don't always have to plan everything." She smiled like she was offering me a gift. "We even recorded a video. You saw it, right?" I nodded. "I saw it." Teresa spoke next. "You've always been so closed off. So we thought maybe a bold gesture would get through to you. We didn't think it would hurt you. You're not sensitive." Harold jumped in. "Let's not blow this out of proportion. It was one weekend. A little trip. We're back now, aren't we?" I didn't move. "You left me alone on my birthday," I said quietly. "You lied. You laughed about it. You used my money to do it." Brent shifted awkwardly. "Come on, man. Don't make it weird." I turned to Mira. "How long did you plan it?" She hesitated. "A few weeks." 3 months, I said, holding up my phone. "I've seen the travel confirmations. The emails. The bookings." Her face dropped. Teresa looked uncomfortable now. "You went through her things?" she asked, like that was the crime. "I managed the accounts," I said. "All of them. The only reason you flew to Venice in business class was because I paid for it. You didn't even try to hide it." Harold scoffed. "You're acting like a victim." "No," I said, taking a step forward. "I'm acting like someone who finally woke up." They went quiet. Mira stepped forward again, placing the shopping bag gently on the table. "Julian, please. You're blowing this up. We're your family." "No," I said again. "You're people I gave too much of myself to. And you took advantage of that. All of you." Teresa sat down slowly, hands clasped in her lap. "You're being emotional." "No," I said, voice steady. "I'm being clear." I picked up the folder I had placed on the counter earlier that morning. Inside were printouts, account closures, suspended cards, legal notices. I slid it across the table. "What's this?" Mira asked, picking it up. "Your access to our accounts is revoked," I said. "All of it. You'll need your own card, your own plan, your own money." Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Brent grabbed one of the pages. "What is this about Tristan?" "He took an unauthorized leave from work," I said. "Company policy requires consequences. And since I oversee executive decisions now, he's suspended pending review." Teresa's jaw dropped. "You wouldn't." "I already did." Harold stood up. "You're making enemies in your own house." "No," I said, "you're in my house. And you've been treating me like a stranger for years." Myra's voice cracked. "Julian, what are you saying?" "I'm saying you erased me from the one day that meant something. You stood there, on video, and said I wouldn't be hurt. That I'd be fine. Like I was just decoration. Background. Some fool who funds your vacations and asks no questions." She tried to interrupt, but I kept going. "I'm not asking for an apology. I'm not asking for explanations. I don't want to hear why it was a joke or how I'm too quiet. This isn't about being dramatic. This is about being done." The silence that followed was heavy. No one reached for the cannoli. Mira looked down at the folder, then back at me. "You can't just cut me off." "I can't," I said. And I did. She stepped forward, lower now, voice pleading. "Julian, we've been together for 10 years. I know exactly how long," I said. "Every day of it. Every dollar. Every lie." Teresa stood. "You're turning your back on your family?" "No," I said softly. "You turned your backs first. And now you're shocked I won't pretend I'm okay. I stepped aside, pointing to the door. Take your bags. Take your bakery box. Go home. Myra's eyes filled. This is our home. It was. Now it's just where I finally woke up. They stood there for another minute. Then Mira slowly picked up her purse. Brent grabbed the suitcase. Teresa said nothing. Harold muttered something under his breath I didn't care to hear. And then, one by one, they walked out. I didn't slam the door behind them. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just locked the door. And finally, I exhaled. Later that night, after. The silence in the house was loud, but it wasn't empty. It felt earned. The kind of quiet that follows after you've finally stopped explaining yourself to people who never truly listened in the first place. I didn't feel proud. I didn't feel sad. I felt awake. For the first time in years, I felt like I had reclaimed something I didn't even realize I had lost, my voice. I walked over to the living room and sat at the desk again. My laptop was still open. So was Myra's email. She never logged out of the shared laptop. I hadn't planned to dig any deeper, but curiosity crept in. A whisper, really? That quiet inner voice asking, what else did they say when they thought you'd never find out? I clicked through the inbox slowly. Nothing surprising at first. Store promotions. Travel confirmations. A forwarded meme from her friend Lydia. Then I saw it, an old email thread with the subject line, Operation Surprise Ghost. I had seen that title before but hadn't opened every message in the chain. This time, I did. There it was. A message from Brent to Mira. Brent, I still can't believe he hasn't caught on. Like, how dense do you have to be to not notice your wife planning a birthday trip with everyone but you? LOL. I read it twice, then kept scrolling. Mira, Julian doesn't pay attention to stuff like this. He's too soft. Honestly, he'll probably say thank you when he sees the video. That's the kind of guy he is. Brent again. Perfect fool. Mira, exactly. Saul and I say it all the time. He actually thinks we're doing something for him. LMAO. Saul? I stared at the screen, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. Who the hell is Saul? It didn't take long to figure out. A few more clicks and I found a series of emails between Mira and someone named Saul Glassman. They used a separate email chain. Most were harmless at first. Jokes, articles, video links. Then came the attachments. Photos. Screenshots. Mira in Italy. Mira on a balcony I didn't recognize. Mira, holding a glass of wine, leaning close to a man I'd never seen before. There was one photo where they were both in robes, in a hotel room. The timestamp? The night of my birthday. I didn't blink. I didn't even look away. I kept reading. Saul? He really still doesn't know? Damn, that's wild. Mira, he's got no clue. Julian's the type who would notice a fire only after it burns down the house. Saul, lucky for us. Mira, unlucky for him. I sat back in the chair, every inch of me still. It wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just infidelity. It was amusement. Mockery. They thought they were being clever. They thought I was a fool, lost in spreadsheets and grocery runs. They were so confident in their little game that they left the pieces sitting out in the open. I opened another tab and messaged my lawyer, Adrian. She and I had worked together for years through my company. Trusted. Efficient. She had handled major contracts and disputes without blinking. I didn't tell her everything, just sent a message. Please prepare a full severance strategy, personal and financial. I'll need a consultation by end of week. I closed the laptop after that. I didn't need to read more. I had seen enough. Every confirmation I didn't even know I needed was now aflame, quietly burning through the old version of my life. But I didn't feel rage. That's what surprised me. I thought I'd be furious. I thought I'd break something. But instead, I felt something else entirely. Relief. Relief that I hadn't imagined it. That the tension in our house hadn't been paranoia. That I wasn't crazy for feeling like a stranger in my own life. The worst part of betrayal isn't the act itself. It's the gaslighting. The way they make you feel guilty for asking questions. For noticing. For caring. And once you learn the truth, all of that weight falls off like old armor. The next morning, I got up early and brewed coffee. I played music, loud and smooth, and opened the windows to let the sun in. Mira hadn't come back. I figured she was staying at her mother's or maybe even Saul's. I didn't care. I turned off the shared location tracking, deleted the backup access to all accounts, sent in the paperwork to close the joint investment profile, blocked her number. I didn't need to yell at her. I didn't need to confront her. The silence was saying everything I needed to say. Later that afternoon, I drove to the bank and met with my private advisor. We moved half the liquid funds into a new account under my name alone. I rewrote my will. I signed a temporary freeze on any withdrawal requests from the old trust fund Mira had partial access to. I even updated the beneficiary details. Everything now flowed through a foundation I had quietly been setting up in my grandmother's name. I didn't tell anyone, not even Malik. By the time evening came, I was sitting on my balcony again. Glass of water this time. The city was glowing, calm, and for the first time in weeks, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't waiting for a phone to ring or for a door to open. I was just still, present. At around 7:45 p.m., I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text came through. Mira, you froze the trust account? Julian, what are you doing? You're ruining everything. I stared at the screen and smiled to myself. Not a big smile. Just enough. I typed out a reply, paused, then deleted it. Instead, I responded with 2 words. Not anymore. Another call. I ignored it. Then my mother. Then Brent. The messages kept coming. All of them frantic. Panicked. Confused. Teresa, why is my credit card declined? Brent, call me now. Seriously. Mira, I need to talk to you. Please. You're going too far. They didn't expect me to find out. They didn't expect me to fight back. And they definitely didn't expect me to do it without raising my voice. But they should have known. I was never the fool. I was just patient. And now, they were about to learn what patience becomes when it finally runs out. It was a Friday morning when Mira finally showed up at my office. I had been expecting it. Honestly, I thought she'd come sooner. But I wasn't surprised it took her that long. Mira had always been bold when she felt powerful, but hesitant when the tide turned. I had just stepped out of a meeting about a property investment with Malik when my assistant buzzed me. Sir, there's someone here to see you. I didn't ask who. I already knew. Let her in, I said, standing up and buttoning my jacket slowly. I wanted to be fully composed, not because I needed to impress her, but because I refused to give her even a flicker of the man she thought she could control. When she walked in, she looked nothing like the version of herself I saw in Italy. No designer coat, no fresh curls, just tired eyes, hair pulled back too tight, a cheap blouse she probably threw on in a rush. But what stood out most was the panic in her face, panic hidden under a thin smile. Julian, she breathed, closing the door behind her. Can we talk? I gestured to the chair across from my desk. You're talking. Go ahead. She sat down slowly. I don't even know where to start. Everything is falling apart. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own words without interruption. She swallowed. My accounts aren't working. The trust access is blocked. Brent got evicted from his place yesterday. My mom and dad's mortgage was declined. They said the joint collateral was removed. What is going on? You're describing the consequences of your choices, I said calmly. She leaned forward. Julian, please. I didn't mean for things to go this far. That video, it wasn't meant to hurt you. We were trying to be funny. Just lighthearted. I raised an eyebrow. You said I wouldn't be hurt by it. You said I was soft. That I wouldn't do anything. That I wouldn't even notice. Her face twisted. You read my emails? I read what was left out in the open, I said. You didn't hide any of it. You just assumed I wouldn't look. She exhaled sharply. Okay, yes. I said some things I shouldn't have. But that doesn't mean you should ruin our lives. I didn't ruin your life, I replied. I stopped funding the one you built on top of mine. She looked like she had been slapped. Julian, we're married. Doesn't that mean anything to you? I leaned forward. It meant everything to me. Until the day you took a trip to Italy with my parents, laughed at me on camera, cheated with another man, and used my money to do it all. You don't get to talk about meaning now. She went quiet. Then softer, almost desperate, she said, tell me what I can do. Just tell me. I'll fix it. I'll do anything. I stood up and walked toward the window, hands in my pockets. You know what hurts the most? I said without turning around. It's not that you forgot my birthday. It's that you remembered it and still chose to make me feel invisible. That's not forgetfulness. That's cruelty. She sniffled behind me. I didn't think you'd care this much. I turned around slowly. That's the problem, Mira. You never thought I'd care. You never thought I'd notice. You never thought I'd leave. You thought I'd just keep giving, keep paying, keep forgiving. Her voice cracked. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. I nodded. Yes, you were. Silence settled between us again, thick like fog. She stood up now too, walking toward me with glassy eyes. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her for a long time before answering. You already did. You just didn't realize it until the money stopped. She looked down at the floor. Her shoulders dropped. She had no more cards to play. Then I said the words that sealed it. I invited you to celebrate the most important day of my life. And you RSVP'd from Rome. That broke her. She crumpled back into the chair, hands over her mouth, sobbing quietly. Not loudly, not theatrically, but the way people do when they finally understand something is truly over. I didn't flinch. I didn't console her. I just stood still and watched the final image of the woman I once loved fade in front of me. A knock at the door interrupted us. My assistant peeked in. Mr. Cross, your noon is here. I nodded. Mira stood up slowly, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Julian, she whispered, voice shaking, please. One more chance. I opened the door and gestured toward it. You should go. She hesitated, then stepped past me into the hallway. Before she left, she turned and looked at me one last time. You used to be so kind. I still am, I said. That's why I'm not dragging this out any longer. The door shut behind her. That night, I posted one last photo on social media. It was me and Malik standing in front of the new property we were launching. A clean, modern office building wrapped in glass and confidence. The caption read, "Growth looks good on me." The likes rolled in. So did the comments. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the message and who it reached. The next morning, Myra's mother called me 5 times. I didn't answer. Brent emailed me a long apology that ended with a request for a loan. I archived it without reading. Teresa sent a text. We didn't realize how serious you were. I deleted it. I wasn't being harsh. I was being honest. They forgot my birthday. So now, I would forget them. Not with rage. Not with revenge. But with the one thing they never expected. Peace. 6 months later, I live in a city where no one calls me the quiet one anymore. No one greets me with a smirk that hides pity. No one expects me to foot their bill while they laugh behind my back. I traded the old house, the old life, and everything tied to it for something cleaner. Something mine. I wake up to peace now. And I don't mean silence, I mean peace. The kind that sits in your chest like a steady heartbeat, not a ticking bomb. I moved out of the house 2 months after Mira left my office. Sold it to a young couple who smiled like they hadn't yet learned how cruel people can be. I packed my things one box at a time, slowly, with intention. I left behind the furniture Mira picked out, the paintings her mother liked, even the rug Teresa once called tasteful for someone so quiet. I didn't want any of it. I took my books, a few clothes, and my grandmother's old piano. That was enough. I bought a loft in a smaller city by the water. High ceilings, clean walls, big windows, quiet neighbors. The kind of place where you can hear your own thoughts and actually want to. Malik helped with the move. He even showed up with a tool set and a bottle of bourbon. This is who you've always been, he said, walking through the empty space. You just needed the noise to stop to hear it. He was right. I started a new project, something small, something personal. A foundation in my grandmother's name. She was the only person who ever really saw me. She raised me part-time when my parents were busy showing off. She used to say, Julian, some people love what you do. Others only love what they can take from you. Learn the difference. I didn't understand it then. Now I do. The foundation provides business grants to men starting over, divorced, displaced, overlooked. Not because I'm bitter, but because I know what it's like to feel erased. To be told you don't matter until your silence becomes a problem. We've helped 12 men so far. One of them, a teacher named Desmond, cried when I handed him a check. You don't even know me, he said. I smiled. I know enough, I told him. I know what it's like to lose everything and realize you were never seen in the first place. I've built a life now where I don't need permission to matter. My calendar belongs to me. My energy belongs to me. My money, my kindness, my time are all mine. Not up for debate. Not up for guilt. I eat dinner with people who listen when I speak. I walk into rooms where I don't need to shrink. I look in mirrors that don't reflect someone else's disappointment. I live. Every now and then, I still hear from the past. Teresa sends emails with subject lines like, "Are you still upset?" or "We didn't mean to hurt you." I never open them. Brent texted me last week. "Heard you're doing well. Proud of you, man." I didn't reply. Proud of me? After calling me a perfect fool? Please. And Mira, well, she tried everything. First came the emails, then the voice notes, then a hand-delivered letter I never opened. She even showed up at the foundation once, hoping for a conversation. But I didn't let her in. My assistant met her at the door and said, "Mr. Cross isn't available today." Which was true. I wasn't available. Not for her. Not anymore. What people don't understand is that healing doesn't always look loud. It's not a big speech or a slam door. Sometimes it's just a quiet walk away and never looking back. That's what I did. And that's why I win. A few weeks ago, I celebrated my birthday. My 46th, Malik threw a barbecue on the rooftop of our new property. It wasn't fancy. No speeches. Just laughter. Real laughter. The kind that doesn't leave a bad taste in your mouth. People showed up who didn't want anything from me. They brought food, drinks, stories. One guy brought his kid. Another brought a cake shaped like a giant eraser. He said, for the man they tried to erase, but couldn't. We laughed for 10 minutes straight. That night, I stood alone for a moment, looking over the city lights. I thought about last year. About the video. The voices. The smug smiles. I thought about the version of me who sat at a rooftop bar alone, holding back tears with a champagne glass in hand. And then I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt, but because I survived it. Because I rebuilt without bitterness. Because I remembered who I was before they taught me to doubt it. I am Julian Cross. I am not the background. I am not the wallet. I am not the man they forgot. I am the man they didn't think could rise. But I did. And I'm still rising. Every day, and every choice, and every breath I take that doesn't ask permission. This is my life now. Not perfect. Not polished. But real. And more than anything, finally mine.